All right, let's get more information on matters to do with the trends to expect on matters to do with aviation. And we are now joined by my colleague, and this is Peter Theory from the Economy Desk. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Abi.
All right, Theory, some good news and, of course, a lot to expect for the aviation business. Let's just begin by, I know we hadn't discussed about this, but I'd like to hear from you. What are your thoughts about us having spaceships landing in Marsabit?
This whole thing is interesting. First and foremost, it's something that's very close to my heart. Every single time we have to talk about space, we have to look outside of the country, and talk about the US, talk about China, talk about South Africa in Africa. So it's a very exciting thing to see students and KSA now trying to develop something that we can locally discuss and be proud of. So definitely a big moment for Kenya.
Amazing. And Theory, of course, let's talk about the aviation business. Looking at the sectors that were hardest hit at the height of COVID, the aviation and airlines were among the most affected. And perhaps what are the numbers telling us? Are we likely to see full recovery anytime soon, considering now that countries are easing travel restrictions, people are also getting vaccinated? What can we expect?
Now, Abi, I heard Noah talk about the rising cost of jet fuel, and I think there is another blow to the aviation industry coming off. Although it was expected, the demand-supply kind of balance, it was expected going into that there was a lot of supply, little demand earlier, and now there is a lot of demand and little supply, so prices go up. Sometime earlier in the year, I remember Kenya Airways CEO Alan Kilavuka saying that they might not recover to pre-pandemic levels up until 2024. And there has been this whole tussle of, do we nationalize? It goes to Parliament, gets shot down, the bill, some things just happen, it doesn't just work out. And of course, bailouts, they don't always come through. And well, it would be very good to be optimistic, but again, based on the results that they have shown,
Sure.
Remember, like KQ was last profitable in 2012, and although up to results for the half year up to June this year showed some improvement from last year, we're still far from a recovery. And based on what he said himself, I think we might see a recovery, but it might not be very immediate. However, I might say that it is not looking as bad as it looked initially. If we look at the global picture, for example, I was seeing CNBC report that the Dubai Air Show 2021, at least, French, I think it's French aerospace manufacturer, Airbus, and also Boeing received hundreds of, orders,
yeah.
Yes, from airlines, and that can only mean that, well, we're recovering. You don't get 400. I think it was 408 for Airbus. You just don't get those offers if business is totally looking like it won't recover. So with the opening of airspaces that happened late last year, and with such numbers as we are seeing, and with like a summit like we're seeing today to try and see how stakeholders can come together and try to make things come back to pre-pandemic levels, we might just be on a path to recovery, but the recovery might not be immediate.
Very spot on. And of course, Theory, it is unfair for us to not discuss about operational costs. These have been one of the key cost centers for airlines when you look at servicing the aircraft, looking at the crew, and not forgetting fuel costs on
Yes.
an airline. And I know innovation is also at another level when it comes to having fuel-efficient aircrafts that can do trips with minimal fuel consumption. How is this likely to affect the aviation stakeholders, especially now that majority of the airlines are still struggling to stay in the skies by having a very slim staff contingent, at the same time looking towards expanding into new routes and getting back to the skies as it ought to be?
Yes, I think this coming at the back of the COP26 is very timely, and especially because one of the main discussions is reducing the carbon footprint. And we have a sustainable aviation fuels that, reduce carbon emission by up to 80%, but the uptake is not as much as we would probably wish at this point. So we're still reliant on jet fuels, the fossil jet fuels by far. And yes, coming from what happened due to the pandemic, a lot of layoffs, grounding of planes, and the cost must keep on increasing. But like you said, they recorded a loss of 11.49 billion up to half year, June 2021. But they said it was less than last year's same period, 2020. And they said that one of the things they did was try and, capitalize on cargo, try and have cooperation with other airlines, such things. Of course, like the summit that they're having today and tomorrow, and I think yesterday, with Embraer and also African Airlines Association, is supposed to come and to realize solutions that can actually mitigate for more loss. Because at this point, having come from a series of losses in the past, I think the point is first reducing the losses, not actually getting a profit. It's about reducing the losses. With such a problem as the fuel problem, prices rising, then it means that they have to do more than they were doing if it was in cargo, if it was in chartered passenger flights, to make sure that they got the money. Something else has to be done so that at least the losses are not as much now that they have to incur another extra cost in jet fuel. What I think is that the discussions so far and the move that KQ has taken, and if something like nationalization eventually goes through, I think they are on the right path to recovery. Remember, these are national carrier, and by all means, we can only hope that things get better in the future. But with the problems that they have had, it will be a little over-ambitious to expect that there is an immediate turnaround, So all I can say is probably coming from the summit, by the end of the summit, they'll come up with really good ways that they can present to Kenyans and say, fine, we did this during the pandemic, cut our losses this much. And right now, because the pandemic is fading away, it's easing away, people are traveling more, it's around the Christmas season, there'll be more travel, this and this and this is what we'll do. And probably the recovery that they expect to have in 2024 will even come sooner. We can only hope.
All right. Speaking about coming sooner, I know the International Aviation Authority, that is IATA, did indicate that the earliest time for airlines to really get back to pre-pandemic levels is 2024. And this is based on forecasts that have been conducted among some of the busiest airlines in the world. But to wrap it up just from you, looking at innovations around fuel-efficient aircraft and, of course, different national airlines contemplating getting to procure some of these airlines. I know in Nigeria they've already gone a step ahead to procure close to 15 aircraft that are fuel efficient, and all this is geared towards ensuring that the cost of operations of the airline are kept at the lowest, since COVID really exposed the soft underbelly of the aviation business.
Yes, sure. And I think just like Nigeria has done, we will also be doing the same at some point. That is just what everybody can hope. And I think the planes you're talking about are the Embraer in 195-E2. And what happens is that the manufacturer himself, the aerospace manufacturer, is also cognizant of the fact that as much as you need a more modern plane, as much as you need something more sophisticated, you need something that also saves you a lot of cost, that also brings you profit. And actually they call it the profit hunter. And I think it's a way to go. And I think with increasing competition across the industry, that's way to go, as well as in trying to, trying to make the whole industry recover, from the manufacturer to the fuel, to the guys who are selling fuel, to the airlines themselves, and thinking of like KQ, how even the staff had to take pay cuts, and a lot of grounding of planes had to be done, and of course suspension of travel was done. a recovery will be will be pegged on the decisions they make, such as in purchasing such planes. That's what I will say, because if it brings efficiency, and if you have to keep on going to the that is, you have to keep to the air, then you have to make sure that you're on the air with something that will cost you less than the cost you used to incur at this point. But
where's the money to procure a new Embraer? How much is one, by the way?
I do not know exactly how much one is, but I think
cargo. You mentioned cargo.
Let's see. Yes, they did cargo before that. They did chartered flights. What I do think is that this summit that they are holding between yesterday and tomorrow is exactly to discuss such things. Okay. And one of the people who is actually a big participant is Embraer themselves, Brazilian. I think they are Brazilian aerospace manufacturers. And these decisions, such as going that extra mile and purchasing that plane that will cost you less, is it looks like a hard decision, but probably some of the decisions that are going to save us in the long term.
All right.
Yes.
Well, many thanks there, Peter Theory, speaking to us just on the matters to do with aviation in the country. Well, let's talk about what's happening in Arusha. Well, the